And welcome. I'm Ruth Hull. I trained as a homeopathic doctor and an integrative health consultant, and I help people who are struggling with fatigue and burnout. I help them rebuild their health and rediscover their energy. Something that is quite common to people who are really fatigued, who are struggling with their health and struggling with their energy, is digestive problems and chronic inflammation. If you're struggling with a lot of digestive problems like bloating, gas, abdominal pain, irritable bowel syndrome, some days you have a runny tummy, some days you don't, some days you can't go to the loo at all, then maybe you're eating something that you're intolerant to. Perhaps you have a food intolerance. Now, food intolerances are very different to food allergies. I just want to clarify that. You're not having a huge allergic response to a food. It's more like the food is just irritating you. It's just not sitting well with you and you're intolerant to it. You're getting an inflammatory response to it. The main foods that people are intolerant to are gluten, dairy, eggs, soy, and corn. But some people are intolerant to other foods. And the best way, I won't say the easiest, because it's not easy, but the best way to find out what you're intolerant to is to do an elimination diet. So in today's video, I'm just going to talk you through how to do an elimination diet. And I just want to say it is not easy. When I talk you through it, it might sound very easy, but I can assure you that once you start doing it, you're going to struggle. It is hard because if you break it, if you cheat just a little bit, you have to start all over again. So if you want to do this, it's a good idea to do it together with a nutritionist or a dietitian. But if you want to do it, be prepared. It's hard. It's not as easy as it sounds. Okay, so what do? The first thing you do is for 7 days, you keep a diary or a journal. You need to write down every single thing you eat and drink for 7 days. You need to write down the date you eat it and the time. And as you write it down, don't just say pasta with bolognese sauce. You've got to say what type of pasta, what was in the pasta, and what was in the bolognese sauce, which vegetables, did you put tomatoes, what spices did you put in? Okay, so it's complicated. You can see already how complicated it is. Once you've done this for 7 days, as you do this for 7 days, so you don't just write down what you ate and drank, the times and the dates, but also write down any symptoms you have. So in the 7 days, write down every time you have any abdominal symptoms, such as bloating, gas, pain, diarrhea, constipation, reflux. But also look for symptoms that are not actually digestive symptoms and write them down. So if you have any headaches, tiredness, fatigue, foggy brain or heavy brain or very poor concentration, poor memory, mood swings. If you get any skin rashes, if you have eczema, if it gets worse, write it down. If you have hives or urticaria, write it down. And if you get mouth ulcers, people who get a lot of mouth ulcers or a very fine rash around their mouth, that's often an indication that it's a food intolerance. So write these down, and with everything you eat, everything you drink, every symptom, you have to put the date and the time. Okay, after 7 days, so you do this for 7 days, that's the easy part. Now it's going to get a bit more complicated. After doing this for 7 days, go through everything you've written, and every time you have one of those symptoms I've talked about, circle it and work back 72 hours. So anything you've eaten within that 72 hours, you've got to take note of. And do this for every symptom, and then sit back and look at the patterns. I think it's easier to circle or highlight the foods that you've eaten within those 72 hours and see if you've eaten the same foods regularly that are now connected to those symptoms. Okay, so do you get the idea? Record everything you eat and drink for 7 days and record all the symptoms you have in 7 days. After 7 days, every time you've had a symptom, Write down or circle everything you ate or drank within that 72 hours. After you've done all of that, you'll see that there'll be certain foods or drinks that are connected to those symptoms. So generally people, hopefully you only have one, but often people have 3, maybe 4. Hopefully you don't have more than that. Now, what you have to do is all those foods that are, I call them the culprits, are the culprits, you know, possibly responsible. You need to cut them out of your diet completely. So this is the second part. Once you've kept the journal, you do an elimination diet. For 2 weeks, you don't have any of those foods, all of them. You cut them all out for 2 weeks. And then at the end of 2 weeks, you should be symptom-free. If you're still having any of those symptoms, then carry on for another 2 weeks. So potentially 4 weeks altogether. If after 4 weeks you're still having those symptoms, then those foods that you've cut out are not causing the problem. But once you've stopped having the symptoms, you've got to wait 5 days. So you've got to have 5 days of no symptoms whatsoever. So you should have 5 days of no abdominal symptoms, no headaches, no hives or skin rashes, nothing like that. Okay, so you see it is a lengthy process. Once you've had 5 symptom-free days, you're going to start challenging the foods. And you're going to introduce one food at a time, and each food for 3 days. So here's how you do it. Let's just say, for example, that you have cut out dairy products because you think that they might be causing your postnasal drip and your sinusitis. When you reintroduce them, do not reintroduce all dairy products together. Choose one. So only have milk, or only try cheese, or only try yogurt. So one at a time, because some people are fine with milk, but they can't have cream or they can't have cheese. So it has to be very, very specific, because you don't want to end up having to cut out all dairy products for the next 3 to 6 months, do you? No, you only want to cut out the culprit. So start your challenge by choosing only one food. On day 1, you have a little bit of it. On day 2, you have a bit more. And on day 3, you have a nice big helping. So for 3 days in a row, you have the same food in your normal meals. You just add it in. And then you watch, and if you have any symptoms within those 3 days or the 72 hours after, then you know that that food is causing you problems and you're intolerant to it. And you need to write it down on your avoid list. If you have no symptoms, then that food is fine and you can eat it. However, do not start eating it whilst you're challenging the other foods that you've cut out. It will just mess up the picture. So know that you can eat it, but only in a few weeks' time when you finish the challenge. Once you've done one food, you do the next, and then you do the next. And once you've finished and you know which foods to avoid, you need to avoid those foods completely for a minimum, an absolute minimum of 3 months. For some people, it will be longer. It just depends on your health. But just avoid those foods. You can eat all the rest that aren't causing the problem. When you have found out that you've got to avoid certain foods, that you're intolerant to them, the battle is not over. You have to be very careful that you don't just cut out an entire food group, because you can end up with nutrient deficiencies. For example, if you choose to cut out all dairy, you know, dairy products have a lot of good nutrients and that your body needs. So you need to make sure that you're getting those nutrients from another source, from another food group or another type of food. This is where I strongly recommend you find a good dietitian or good nutritionist to help you, because you really don't want to end up with a type of malnutrition or a lack of nutrients because you're trying to heal your body. So once you've done the elimination diet and you know the results, if you need to cut out quite a few foods, please find a qualified registered nutritionist or dietitian who can help you, somebody who really knows about food and can give you proper, good alternatives to what you're cutting out. Okay, so that's all from me for today. Thank you so much for listening, and I will chat to you guys again soon. Bye.